On this episode, we are adding fluid to the braking system. There comes a point in every build when it might be the appropriate time to start adding fluids. In this case, I think we're almost ready, okay? If not, then I'm gonna force myself to be ready. But the cab, inside and outside, is completed. So I went with a silver on the front. This is a Hyundai silver. It's the same color as the exhaust. Same color as the interior trim. I went with a matte finish on the front to match the exhaust and the interior trim. And then the rest is the Ford antimatter blue. And except for the part where I touched it, it's clean. I will spin it around so you can take a look. Once I get the spots off. But then that means I have to touch it again. So I got the sound deadening on the inside. There's sound deadening, and then I got the 4mm foam over the top of that where the carpet's gonna go. I left the side parts exposed, but I think the carpet will probably go over that. I don't know yet. And then 10mm foam over sound deadening everywhere else in the cab. So on the sides, on the top, on the roof, the back, and then when you tap it from the outside, no more tinny sound. Those are all parts that have to go on. I'm going to put the cab on the frame, then we can start the wiring. So let me just explain. The bed covers most of this. I finished it from here down, and the rest is just, let's just say, I didn't want to spend a lot of time trying to body finish this part. You can see dents. From the side shot, they're not going to be very visible. You have to be extra careful now when you touch it. You don't want any scratches or anything else, so anxiety level increased. The cab sits on top of the brake booster. There's an access panel, but I'm just gonna do it like this for now. So this system is completely dry. It's all brand new. I plumbed it a year ago, maybe more. I lose track of time. But what needs to happen is I have to take everything off, remove the master cylinder, and bleed the master before I put it all back together and start adding fluid to the brakes. Could you do it without bleeding the master? You could. You could just drop fluid in it and start pumping the brakes, but there's going to be air bubbles in there for about 3 to 4 months. So if you got 3 or 4 months to spare with spongy brakes, that's fine. But what needs to happen is, it's a new master, we got to bleed the master, and we put the master back on, then we hook everything else up, add the fluid, and start bleeding the brakes. Checking for leaks mostly, but you know, maybe it'll all work. Maybe. So what I like to do is I get the cab completely out of my way so I don't bump into it. And if you look over here, there's some foam insulation I added to the side of my motorcycle lift so I don't accidentally bump it. And then there's a piece of carpet down here to roll it up against so it doesn't go any further and bump into anything. And then when it's just sitting still, I lock the wheels so it can't roll. And then I have some aluminum shielding. I'm gonna figure out a way to come up like this and protect this from the heat. And I'm also probably going to have to fit something here because I got an electronic controller coming out. I got to run the wires up to the speedometer. So way back when we got it, we painted it with 415. Because that way it won't rust as much. I probably would have sandblasted it and smoothed it out, but it goes onto the truck, nobody's really going to see it that much. So we need to fill this up and then get the air bubbles out of this piece. So you can see the bubbles popping already. And there's a plunger in there. And then it's just basically manually pumping the brakes. You want to go all the way forward till it stops and let it back. Okay, so now that's bled. It's just to try to minimize spillage on the trip back. Clean hands. So now we go put it back on and start all over again. So there's a rod in here. You can see what I mean. So when you hit the brake pedal, it pushes the rod out. This is the vacuum booster. So what happens is this gets connected to the engine side vacuum, and then when you push the brakes, the vacuum helps activate the brakes. Vacuum boosted brakes. Otherwise it's just manual. It's foot power only. And I don't care what you do, you're going to get brake fluid on stuff, so be careful for your painted portions. And then what we can do is bring all the tools you wanted at one time instead of just bringing some. Idiot. So there's a little bit of lubricant on here, but just a little bit of grease is your friend. This is exposed to the underside. And there's actually a hole down here to let this part drain. A little bit of grease, like I said. Here's your friend. And then anytime you're working with brakes, you're gonna get brake fluid on everything. I don't care how much you do to try and stop. These are my little plugs leaking mostly. And then I have to avoid all of these goofy frickin' lines. And then even though it has a lock washer on it, just a dab. Okay, so that's all back on. Now, here's the important part. Don't let this get empty while you're bleeding the brake system. So I'm going to pull a plug, and then I'm going to plug it in. There's going to be brake fluid dripping everywhere, so we're going to have to keep this, make sure it stays full while we do this. This is not going to be pretty, so it's okay. Just do the best you can. I'm going to start with the most difficult one here. Stupid camera's in my way. So get rid of this. I need to go to that. We should start in the rear. But I don't have a way to pump the rears yet. And I don't think we can use gravity feed. I think we're going to have to do all of this the hard way. I really do. Okay. So now we can pump. It squirts, so don't let it scorch in the face. Okay. So I got fluid dripping out right here. Which means I got a bad flare, most likely. And also on the other side. So 2 bad flares. And I've already cranked on it. So much that I don't want to crank on it anymore. I don't know, maybe. It's dry. Okay, so not a bad flare. Just not enough torque.